Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So we'll continue our discussion on history, okay, modern India. We have so far done around 5-6 lectures in this particular series, okay. So in this session, I'll be talking about the Great Famine in central part of India, which happened in 1876-78 time. So we'll be talking about this famine. Then we will also talk about 1877, something which is very famous, that is Delhi Durbar, which happened during the time of this famine, which angered the nationalists. Okay, Delhi Durbar 1877. And we will also talk about 1880, the famine code, which was drafted by Strachey. Okay, and we will also talk about some other important concepts like which happened in 1878, like Vernacular Press Act. Okay, Vernacular Press Act. We will talk about Arms Act. We will also talk about that issue of lowering the age of civil services and the impact of it. Okay, and then during Ripon's time, there is a very controversial bill which was introduced, that also we'll discuss, which is known as Ilbert bill. Okay, so and if time permits, I'll be talking about Congress, and we'll see Congress in detail. Okay, so let's start with the first topic. Now, when I'm discussing about famine, I'm actually talking about Lord Lytton's time. Okay, so we are actually talking about Lord Lytton, and this period, it's actually 1876 to 80. This period is full of controversies, and Lytton was a very cruel governor general, and nationalism was on the rise during this time. We have already discussed that in 1853 railways introduced, and then it connected India, and nationalism emerged because of that. Okay, one of the reasons for emergence of nationalism is actually introduction of railways, as it connected India. And then we have also talked about establishment of universities, that also helped in the emergence of nationalism. All those things we have discussed already, so I'm not getting into the details of it. So the point is, during this time, nationalism was on the rise. Okay, and the reactionary policies of Lytton during this period actually culminated into the formation of Congress in 1885. So we will be discussing about that shortly. Okay, so the first point that we need to discuss is the Great Famine in central part of India, which occurred during 1876-78 time. Now, what do you mean by famine? Famine is actually acute shortage of food, which is caused due to either natural or man-made reasons. Okay, so let me write it down. Acute shortage of food in a given area, either due to natural or man-made reasons. Okay, now what do you mean by natural reason? I'm talking about flood, earthquake, drought, etc. What do you mean by man-made reasons? The wars, ethnic clashes, and all these are actually man-made reasons. Okay, now here this famine, is it due to natural reason or man-made reason, is a big debate. The Britishers argue that it is because of natural reasons, and the nationalists argue that it is because of man-made reason. And in fact, this famine is actually due to man-made reason. So this famine is not due to natural reason, and it is actually caused because of the wrong policies and the implementation of different policies by the government. So this is one of the criticism of the nationalist, and that went against the government. So there were two stands on this. Nationalist on one side, they were arguing that it is man-made reason, government is responsible for the famine, and government or the British arguing that it is not man-made, it is natural reason. Okay, so the debate was like this. One group is arguing poverty led to famine. Okay, that means poverty is because of man-made reason, it is because of the government policies and the implementation of policies, and that is the reason for famine. On the other side, famine leads to poverty. Okay, so this is the argument of the nationalists. Poverty leads to famine. What the nationalists argued is British policy of high rate of taxation, which made people poor. Okay, so high rate of taxation made people poor. So when you are poor, your purchasing power actually reduced. So when the purchasing power is reduced, even the small variation in prices can cause acute shortage of food. So even the small variation of prices will affect the poor people. Also, the small variations in production also result into shortage of food. Okay. But what is the government stand? Government stand is nature was responsible for drought. There was a drought. Okay. So drought due to nature, and then there is no rainfall. Okay, and this led to famine, and because of that people became poor. That means famine led to poverty. So ultimately two views are there. You just need to have some idea about that. These are the two views. Nationalists say poverty led to famine, and government say famine led to poverty. Okay, now you can see it was in central part of India. It was very much affected in central part of India. Around 25 lakh people perished, and lakhs of animals also died in this famine. But more than this famine, the government behavior is what angered and annoyed the nationalists. See, when people were suffering, the government conducted a very famous ceremony in 1877, which is known as Delhi Durbar. So millions of people were suffering on one side, but this Delhi Durbar was conducted by spending huge amount of public money in 1877, which angered the nationalists. Okay, now why this Delhi Durbar was conducted? It was actually held to welcome Queen Victoria. So to welcome Queen Victoria, who came to India for the first time. Okay, so this Delhi Durbar was actually conducted to welcome Queen Victoria in 1877. She was declared as Empress or Queen of India in this Delhi Durbar. She was also given a title Kaiser-i-Hind. Okay, this was given to Mahatma Gandhi also when he was in South Africa. And what is Kaiser? Kaiser is actually the Persian version of Caesar. Okay, so in this Durbar, why this Delhi Durbar was conducted? It is basically for welcoming Queen Victoria, and she was given this status Empress, or she was declared as Empress or Queen of India, and she was given this title Kaiser-i-Hind, which was also given to Mahatma Gandhi when he was in South Africa. Okay, now there will be two more Delhi Darbars which are going to come, and out of which 1911 is going to be more important, because in that the capital was shifted from Calcutta to Delhi, and there was annulment of partition of Bengal also. These two provisions are important, and this was actually asked in a prelims in 2015. We'll come back to that later. See, welcoming Queen is not a problem, but the problem here was huge amount of public money was spent to welcome this Queen Victoria when she came to India, basically to appease the Queen by the local kings, right? Because if you remember in 1858 we have discussed about Queen's proclamation, and in that there were 3 points, right? The first point was there won't be any further annexations. So I'm just talking about Queen's proclamation after the 1857 revolt, when the Queen directly took up the control over India from East India Company. Okay, no state would be annexed. So that means 1/3 of India was remaining as princely states, and this will remain as princely states forever. And if you know some history, after independence, this was one of the most important problem that we actually faced to consolidate India, right? Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and all, they have done huge effort to consolidate India and to mobilize India together. Okay, so that was actually a big problem. If that was also with Britishers, it would have been easy for us after independence to consolidate the entire area. Now, second point in that Queen's proclamation is there won't be any conversion by force, which is not relevant here. I'm just writing it down anyway. No conversion by force. And the third point is there won't be any discrimination in the recruitment of army services. Okay, no discrimination in the recruitment of army services. These were Queen's proclamation. Out of this you can see the first point, no state would be annexed. So the kings were happy, the princely state, the kings were happy with this provision, and they want to appease the queen so that the queen won't change her mind, and there won't be any further annexation in future also. And it was a gentlewoman promise, and it was kept till independence. And just now I told you that was the major problem that we faced during the time of independence, to consolidate into a single Indian state. Okay, so that is why this Delhi Durbar conducted, and many Indian local kings came. They have donated many things to the queen. They have presented many things, the precious stones and metals and everything. Okay, and huge amount of public money was spent during this Delhi Durbar. So you just need to have some idea about this Delhi Durbar. Now, after this famine, a commission was appointed. So the commission was appointed by the government. So if the question is about who appointed the commission, it was appointed by Lytton only, because famine was during Lytton's time. So the commission was appointed by Lytton. The commission was headed by Richard Strachey. I'm not feeling well actually, that is why you may be facing problem, so I'm talking slow. If you want, you can watch the video in 1.5 speed or 2 speed. Okay, it's very difficult for me to talk today. Richard Strachey is actually the head of the commission. Okay, and it was appointed by Lytton, but the famine code was drafted, which is in 1880 under Ripon. Okay, so that has to be very clear for you. Who appointed the commission? The commission was headed by Richard Strachey. Lytton appointed, and when the famine code was drafted, it was under Lord Ripon's time in 1880. So we'll quickly discuss about that famine code here. Okay, so famine code 1880. So the first point is actually there won't be any tax. Okay, but not in all area. If there is a crop failure of 50% or more, there won't be any tax. So let me write it down. No tax in the areas where more than 50% of crop failure. Okay, so if the crop failure is more than 50%, you don't want to pay tax. That is the first provision of the famine code. Second is actually government will provide food for those areas where famine is affected. Actually, government will give work, and in return government will give food. So it's similar to the food for work program. Okay, so government will provide food to the people in the famine affected area. Okay, what is the third point? Government will provide fodder for the animals. Okay, so government will provide fodder for the animals. Okay, so this is the famine code. So you need to know the 3 points here. They can ask you which among the following is correct with respect to famine code 1880. So what all things you need to know is the commission was appointed by Lytton, headed by Richard Strachey, and the famine code was drafted under the Governor Generalship of Lord Ripon, and these are the provisions. No tax in the areas where there is 50% or more crop failure. The government will provide food for the people. The government will provide fodder for the animals. Okay. Now next we'll move on to Arms Act. I've told you already there are 3 controversial decisions which happened during Lord Lytton's time. The first one being Arms Act. It is in 1878. See, what is this rule? Under this, the rules for getting license to possess arms were made much tougher for Indians. Okay, so now if you need to get license to possess arms, you have to follow some strict or tougher rules which was not applicable for English. Okay, what is the idea? Idea is basically to discourage Indians to possess arms, and Britishers realized that it will be very difficult or dangerous if Indians possess arms. Okay, so to discourage them, the license to possess this arms, and to get that license you have to follow certain rules and procedures that became more tougher for Indians. But that is not the case with English, and nationalists felt that it is discriminatory and they went against it. Okay, so that is about Arms Act. The rules for license to possess arms became more tougher for Indians. Let me write it down. Rules for license to possess arms were made much tougher for Indians. So this is about the rule, and that same was not applicable in case of English, so it was felt discriminatory by the nationalists and they went against the government. Okay, next point. Vernacular Press Act 1878. Vernacular Press Act 1878. Okay, so what is this? It's all about, a kind of censorship was imposed on vernacular language newspapers. That means if vernacular language newspapers, if they want to publish something, it has to pass through certain censors. Okay, so it has to be watched before. Okay, and only after that you can publish something in the vernacular language newspaper. But the same is not applicable in case of English language newspaper. And nationalists felt that it is again discriminatory, right? So let me write it down. Censorship was imposed over vernacular language newspapers. Okay, so I have already told you the vernacular language newspapers has to pass through censors, and this was a huge attack towards the freedom of expression. And intellectuals at any point of time, they always demand freedom of expression and thoughts, and Indian Constitution guarantees through Article 19(1) of our Constitution. The only major blot which happened after independence was in 1975-77 time, that is during the time of emergency. You can see almost 100 years, exactly 100 year celebration you can see. Okay, and in some cases Indira Gandhi was even compared with Lord Lytton because of this provision of, during that time also censorship was imposed on the newspapers. Okay, so this has to be made clear. Vernacular Press Act means the vernacular language newspaper has to pass through certain censors, and it was discriminatory because the same was not applicable in the case of English language newspapers, and the nationalists directly went against the government. Third point that we need to discuss, which is related to Lytton, again in 1878, there was a lowering the age of civil services. Lowering the age for civil services. Okay, so what was the maximum age limit till then? Maximum age limit till then was 21 years. Now the maximum age limit to write this exam was reduced from 21 to 19 years with a minimum qualification of being a graduate. That means you need to be a graduate if you need to write this exam. At the same time, you cannot be above 19 years, and it is very difficult for Indians to satisfy this condition because the education system in India is so designed that you can complete +2 only after 16 or 17 years of age. Then how can you get graduation at the age of 19? Even you have to be graduated at the age of 18 if you need to get one attempt, right? Because 19 is the maximum age limit. So that was a big problem for a lot of aspiring middle class Indians, and many of them could not write this examination because of this provision, although it will be repealed by Ripon later in 1881. But some of the Indians were not able to see during this time when it was implemented. The people who is having 20 years, they cannot write this exam. Okay, 21 years, they could have given one more attempt, they cannot write this exam. 19 years, some can write, some cannot write. Now what will happen after 3 years when this decision will be repealed? This person will become 24, so he cannot write. Now this group will become 23, okay, and this people will become 22. So even after repealing this provision, they cannot write the exam. So you can see most of the people who were in the Congress in the beginning, they belongs to this particular group, those who cannot write this particular exam, and their anger directly culminated into the formation of Congress, and they were one of the initial leaders of Congress also. Okay, so if you remember, we have discussed in 1833 Charter Act, there was a provision that there should not be any discrimination on the basis of sex, color, creed, place of birth, etc. In the recruitment of civil services, right? But that promise now is that going to be possible to implement when you are reducing the age to 90 years? No, this is a kind of discrimination, right? It is very difficult for Indians to be a graduate. At the same time, maximum age limit should be 19 years. So that promise is now going to be difficult to keep. So I hope you understood this point. Next, we'll discuss about one controversial provision which happened during bill which happened during the period of Lord Ripon, that is Ilbert Bill. Okay, Ilbert Bill. See, Lord Ripon was a very liberal person, and he have in the beginning itself in 1881. See, the three controversial policies that we have discussed: Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, and the lowering the age of civil services, all were repealed actually. Okay, so all were repealed. So naturally, he won the hearts and minds of millions of Indians. And for your information, I'll tell you that when Ripon was called back to England by the government, he was given a big sent off by the local people, and the local people were actually demanding Lord Ripon to continue in India. Okay, so such a thing was never happened with any of the Governor General before or after Ripon. Okay, so that kind of Governor General was Lord Ripon. But one controversial thing which happened during Ripon's time was Ilbert Bill, that was in 1883. Okay, now the original, see, he was a liberal person, he wanted to do some reforms. Now see, the original bill was like this: an Indian judge could hear the case of English. Okay, so that is actually a good thing. But some English people reacted and responded and protested against this, and the bill was amended, and the amended bill was like this: an Indian judge could hear the case of Europeans in the presence of a European judge. Okay, so it was felt discriminatory by the nationalist, because English judge can hear the case of Indians, but Indian judge cannot hear the case of English. And if Indian judge need to hear the case of English, he must be assisted by a European judge. That is a kind of discrimination, and that was opposed by the nationalists because it was felt as discriminatory. And this is a controversial policy bill which happened during Ripon's time. Okay, so the original bill, Indian judge could hear the case of English. The amended bill, Indian judge could hear the case of English with the assistance or in the presence of English or European judge. So he must be assisted by a European judge. So this is discriminatory. See, we have talked about two concepts, two judicial reforms introduced by Lord Cornwallis in 1793, rule of law and equality before law. So when I talked about equality before law, at that time itself I have told you, even though they have introduced equality before law, this equality is between or among Indians. When you compare it with English and Indian, that equality is not there. Okay, so that's about Ilbert Bill. Okay, now let me quickly discuss about Congress formation. Okay, so it was in the year 1885. Whether it is safety valve or lightning conductor, all those discussions from mains point of view we have already done. So here I'll be talking about the facts, and we will be talking about this lightning conductor safety valve issue later also. Okay, so here I'll talk about few facts related to Congress. It was on 28th December 1885. Okay, the first session was at Bombay. See, the original venue which was fixed at Pune, but because of plague it was shifted to Bombay. Okay, the first session was held at Sir Tejpal Guru Gokul Das Sanskrit Vidyalaya. Okay, so 100 people attended the session. So 100 attended, 72 were members, and rest others were officials. Others were officials. So who was the first president? The first president was W.C. Banerjee, and the first secretary was A.O. Hume. Okay, so these are few facts related to the Congress in the year which is formed, that is in 1885, that you need to remember. It was in Bombay. The first session was at Bombay. Sir Tejpal Guru Gokul Das Sanskrit Vidyalaya. 100 people attended, out of which 72 members and others were official. The first president is W.C. Banerjee and the first secretary was A.O. Hume. Okay, now if you need to know what is Congress, let's try to understand the first 4 sessions of Congress, and then you will have a complete idea about Congress. I'll take 5 minutes and I'll explain what is that 4 sessions, so you'll get the complete idea of Congress, what is the objective of Congress, and what ideology the Congress is propagating, and everything you'll get it. Okay, so let's talk about first 4 sessions. You can see 1885, 1886, 1887, 1888. So you can see the first session was held at Bombay, the second session Calcutta, then Madras, then you can see Allahabad, right? So you can see 4 sessions in 4 different states or 4 different areas, and you can see these are in 4 different zones, right? You can see this is in western part of India, this is in eastern part of India, this is in southern part of India, and this is in northern part of India. So what is the idea? Congress is not a regional organization. It's not a East Indian organization or South Indian organization. No, it's a complete, it comprises of complete India. It represents complete India. Okay, it represents all the area. Now let's look into the presidents. Okay, now in 85, I've already told you the Congress president was W.C. Banerjee, and 86 in Calcutta, Dada Bhai Nauroji. Okay, third Badruddin Tyabji, the first Muslim president, and this question was asked in 2017, and George Yule. Okay, now you see here one thing that you can understand if you look into the Congress presidents. W.C. Banerjee was a Hindu, Dadabhai Nauroji was a Parsi, Badruddin Tyabji was a Muslim, and George Yule was a Christian. So 4 leaders are from 4 different religions. What does that mean? Congress is not a particular religious organization. It's not an organization of Muslims. It's not an organization of Hindus also. So it comprises of all the religions. So I've already talked about 4 different regions. It represents all the region. It also represents all the religion, because you can see the presidents in 4 years are from 4 different religion. Moreover, you can see this session was held at Bombay, and W.C. Banerjee was not a Maratha, or he's not from Bombay, and this is at Calcutta, but Dadabhai Nauroji is not a Bengali, and the session was held at Madras. Badruddin Tyabji is not a Madrashi, and similarly George Yule also. So the presidents were from different parts. So why all these things? It is carefully crafted and it is carefully done, because in India you can see the main identities. Okay, it is based on caste. The identity in India is basically based on caste, religion, and region. So everything is actually understood in terms of this at that time, even now also in some cases, right? So to challenge this organization, that Congress is not any particular caste-based organization, not a religion-based organization, not a region-based organization. That is the reason why this is actually carefully crafted. Different sessions at different parts of the country, and different presidents are from different religion, and if the session is conducted at the place X, the presidents will not be from that particular place, will be from some other place. Okay, so I hope these ideas are clear. So this will help you to understand what is the objective, what is the ideology of Congress at the time of its formation. Now if you have any doubt, you can get in touch with me. Okay, this is my Instagram ID. Okay, so if you have any doubts related to civil service exam, history, economy, sociology optional, I have this different programs, mentorship program and all. Okay, so I can help you out. You can get in touch with me in this ID. So I hope to see you guys.